And we're live. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Maple Syrup. It's lovely to see everybody here. We are here today with a special guest, Bill DeVoe. We had said that Cathy DeVoe, his daughter, was going to join us, but unfortunately, she can't come tonight. So it's just Bill, but that is 100% better than just me and George. Let's admit that. Right, George?
Yes.
Yes, it is. George and I have many awkward conversations with just us. You don't need to be another part of that. So we brought Bill here today, and this is another one of George's choices. He said, let's get Bill. I said, okay, what are we going to talk about? And he said, trading card games. I said, okay, let's do that. So welcome, Bill, to the show. How are you tonight?
I'm doing great. How about yourselves?
I'm doing wonderful. George, you doing well?
Pretty good. Yeah.
Thumbs up, thumbs up. So, Bill, tell us a little bit more about yourself. How did you get into gaming? Why'd you get into game design? And then why'd you get into publishing?
Oh, wow. Yeah, okay. So I started playing games a long time ago. I got involved in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons when I was about 10. I had a group of guys at school that I went to, and it was the cool thing to do. We had miniatures, although we didn't actually play the mini stuff. We just had the minis of our guys and painted them for fun. And really kind of got, nipped by the bug of playing and wanting to create in that space. And so I ended up doing some dungeon mastering for those guys. I was also a player for several of the campaigns, but I kind of migrated more into the world creation stuff. I started making things and writing programs on my Commodore 64 to create weather, for the whole year for my players, so that I would know on June 3rd it's going to do this or whatever. And
you made like an almanac.
Yeah, I did. In essence, yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
And Dragon Magazine was my favorite magazine of all time, and just really began that process. That was when it started. I was, like I said, 10, 12 kind of thing, and that's when I started really loving doing that. As the years went on, as I went to high school and college and stuff, I got introduced to a bunch of stuff like BattleTech, Pendragon, role-playing game, which was all about the Knights of the Round Table, King Arthur and stuff. You have a knight in Arthurian Britain, and it's a great game. I loved it, and really started kind of the idea of Roundtable began because I started playing Magic right around when Legends came out. So it was after Unlimited, right after Revised got released, and they released Legends, and I began the process of okay, now I want to start playing this game, and just fell in love with it. There's all of the different cards and the exploration and all those things. So really got interested along with my friend group in going down that path of just hey, what's going on with these things. And we picked up a whole bunch of other games like Rage, and we picked up the Star Trek game, and we picked up this other game I've been trying to remember on this TCG Discord I'm part of. I think it was called Terror. I think there was 4 decks that were ever sold, and 2 of them were to me. And just all these different games. And we tried.
I have to admit, that does sound like a lot of TCGs, actually.
Yeah, well,
I have a crate of them. Yeah,
yeah, and it's not a lot. Shockingly, there's a guy on that Discord who's got 800 or something. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
but
not supported, very dead TCGs.
Yes, very dead. Yeah. Yes. Well, and then you've got Legends of the Five Rings. You've got all these games that were really popular, and then WotC had the patent for trading card games, and they were pay up or shut down, and so a lot of places shut down. I think Decipher paid, but regardless, the landscape changed a lot, and then suddenly Wizards of the Coast was kind of the big dog on the block, and then they got Pokemon, and then it was over pretty much at that point. You had other games coming out, but my interest was really in Magic, and what I loved about Magic was the exploration. Really kind of getting into what happens, how do you find these things? You open up a deck or a pack, and you're like, oh my god, what the hell does this card do? That sounds so cool, and look at the artwork, that's really neat. So getting into game design, I've been writing computer games for forever, mostly for my own entertainment. I wrote games that I wanted to play and nobody else was making. And then I went into, then about 15 years ago, I started playing with the idea of a trading card game in the Arthurian Legends and came up with some ideas. And it was very strongly influenced by Pendragon at the time. And then a few years ago decided, we're done having this as a thing in my background processes, consuming cycles. I need to get it out of my head and actually into something that's working. And so, thankfully, we got a really good team that came together, just sort of magically coalesced. It was really interesting how, it's like I mentioned something to somebody and they would say, "Wow, that sounds really cool. I want to be part of that." We're like, "Okay, welcome aboard." Um, and so that's how Roundtable sort of came about at the first part. But it was really interesting because, again, it was all of these things that we have been doing and all the game design and interests that we had over all these years really allowed us to understand a lot of the things that were happening with trading card games that we didn't like, and then find solutions that would have let us make things that we did like. And so I think that was the really interesting part for us was, trying to figure out how do I keep this thing from happening so that the game can be more fun for longer, kind of thing.
Right. So some of that's going to be mechanical, some of that's going to be
absolutely
delivery models, some of that's going to be all sorts of different things like culture, community. TCGs have a lot going on. They're much more than just a simple game. There's an ecosystem around them, right? So
yeah,
tell me a little bit about how did you progress from being a casual player to maybe a more competitive player to basically a critic of TCGs to say, I want to make my own and this is how I'm going to do it. What do you think was the key parts of those processes? What led you down this road?
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. Evolution. So, when we started playing, it was all about the discovery. Although there was the element of competitions, they were just really beginning. Duelist Convocation, which was Magic's official tournament platform, didn't really exist yet. We didn't really have a web, so you couldn't get FAQs or errata very easily. We had to go up to
there was rec.magic.net.
Exactly. Yeah, you had to use
Usenet.
Yeah, you had to go to Usenet and get those. And Tom Oz was the big person who was posting all those things up all the time. And we were really thankful because we had that. And I had some experiences in tournaments that were very not good. So we started playing. My first real official tournament was a place called BenCon, which was here in Colorado, and they based your sort of what league you were in based on how big your collection was. And we're like, okay, yeah. So if you have under 500 cards, you were in the newbie league. If you had 500 to 1500, you were in this league. If you had more than 1500, you were in this other league. And so I played in one of the higher leagues. We had probably, I don't know, about 3,000 cards at that point. And I played one of the higher leagues, and my girlfriend, now wife, and my best friend played in the lower league to kind of see. And the lower league was like, okay, yeah, I have 500 cards, but they're all, alpha rares. Yeah, okay, whatever. That you have to cut your whole collection, not the pieces that you culled out to make your deck. But yeah, I think people were dropping, Lodi and Moxes all over the place in that lower level thing. And I'm just like, that doesn't make sense. But I actually had an experience where someone was trying to attack me with a Sarah Angel, and in Magic, the Sarah Angel doesn't tap to attack.
No tapping.
But I tapped her. I twiddled her so that she was tapped. And the guy was like, well, I'm going to attack with her. And I'm like, you can't attack with a tapped creature. He's like, but she doesn't tap to attack. I said, that doesn't matter. You can't attack with a tapped creature. That's the ruling from WotC. And the judge was like, no, you can totally attack with her. And I was just like, okay, well, then I'm dead. And I lost. And so I got eliminated. And I'm like, okay, now I'm going to be a judge so that I can keep that crap from happening to other players.
Right.
And so my whole group and I got involved as DCI judges. We were actually level 2 judges at one point. We could do regional qualifiers for DCI. And so we had a really good understanding of the game and of the rules and the combos and everything else. Our meta game from a competitive standpoint wasn't as strong. We saw other players who were like on a different level with how they understood how the cards work together and the interplay and all that stuff. And I'm like, okay, I can't play competitively, or certainly not professionally. I can play competitively, but I can't play at a world tour level. So that was a humbling experience. But then as we kept playing and we kept seeing how things were going, we began to realize that, there's some things that were happening. We began to see a lot of degenerate combos showing up. It was not quite the first turn kill combos yet, but it was like there were locks, right? If I got these 4 cards in play, it was over. I was going to hit you with an 86,000 point fireball. And so, it got very frustrating for a while. So we actually quit for a bit. We kind of got back into it with Kamigawa because we were really interested in the mythology, the lore of that particular set and the setting for it. I loved the samurais and the ninjas. And so it was really nice to kind of play some stuff like that. But we were very selective. We actually bought singles from an online dealer so that we would just have like, here's the deck I'm going to make and play with. I'm going to buy these cards and I'm going to make that deck, and that's what we're doing.
Right.
And so it was a lot lower investment than what we had been doing before, which was buy 8
Cases
boxes of boosters, and and then sit at the bar and open them up for 4 hours, which was a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong, but it was also just
it's inefficient.
Yes, it was very inefficient. Anyway, we like I said, we played a whole bunch of other stuff as well, and so we kind of saw some interesting mechanics in other games, but when we began to see other things, Commander came out, and it was like, almost everybody plays Commander now as opposed to anything else.
So weird.
And I'm just like, it's cool, and I love, Nicol Bolas was in one of my decks, and I love a good dragon deck. But I was just like, this is 100 cards. They all have to be unique. It's just, I don't know. And then I began to see what WotC was doing with how they were rolling out their new packs and stuff. And it was like, oh, here's a starter set. But it's not a starter set. It's a commander deck. And here's all the cards. You know exactly what cards you're going to get in that deck. And I'm like, well, where's the fun of that? I want to uncover things. I want to explore the space of the set and find new things that I've never seen before. We didn't have really the card lists until about the mid 90s. And so we didn't know what was in a set until you opened decks and you saw all the cards and you put them into your pockets on your binder as you collect, get your collection going. And so, when we finally started getting card sets, and really nicely formatted ones that you could print and, know what exactly the cards were and what the effects were and the flavor text, it kind of lost a little bit of the magic for me, but it was it was fine. I mean, it was like finding those cards was still fun. Yeah. And then, like I said, but, having a deck, it's like, well, I'm going to get the Eowyn, Lord of the Rings commander deck, and I know exactly what's in it because it's the exact same deck that everybody else who bought that deck has.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so we looked at that and thought, that's just not fun for us. And, there's people, on that TCG Discord I was talking about, called Total Aces. There's people there who are like, no, LCG and ECG is the way to go, man. You got it. And I'm like, you know what? No. I played Illuminati. That was, I think, an ECG by current definitions. And I'm like, and it was fun. I loved it. It was great, but it was weird, like having all the cards, like one purchase and you have all the cards. I was like, I don't want to spend all the time making new content all the time to justify my existence. I kind of like, again, the idea of opening up a deck and not knowing what's going to be in there. And you get to the legendaries, you're like, oh yeah, these are the ones, baby. I can make a deck around this or something. And that
there is something fun
missing
about that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was what it was for us.
So let's talk about that a little bit. George, what do you think about ECG versus TCG versus LCG versus all those CG things? What is your favorite? What's your experience with it, and why do you like what you like?
I like them both for different reasons. So I've just gotten back into Magic,
I
and
saw that.
um, and I actually quite appreciated the pre-con commander because one, they're not terribly optimized. So there's plenty of space in them to replace cards with things that more fit my playstyle. But like, there have been something like 20,000 cards printed since I got out of the game. And I have the sort of brain where like I would want to onboard all of those cards into my head before I built a deck. And this is something I can just take and be like, though I mean if it had a little bit of variation in what was in there, I don't think that would invalidate what I'm about to say. So maybe I'm contradicting myself, but yeah, it gives me a way to get in. Like I know at least these cards work together, and I can use this as a way to branch out and start absorbing that other information.
Mhm.
At the same time, I have fond memories of being like, I had heard about the Hive, and I had never seen one. And it was like
Yep.
2 months, and someone like got one in a pack, and we're like, "What does this do?" It makes insect like just
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
cards.
No,
Even though I had heard, and I knew what it did, but I had never seen one in person. And there's just the kind of excitement that you can't get on the internet anymore because now someone will have one the first week and show you. But yeah,
Yeah.
that sense of discovery. I mean, I remember the dark had come out, and we knew, and I was down the shore with my
Oh,
friend.
the dark.
It's the only set I have a full like a binder of them all. It's not a very good set, but it's nostalgic for me.
It's not a very
No,
good
No, it's
set.
not a
but
good
like
set at all.
but we knew like somewhere for, and we didn't have MapQuest back then, but like we knew about 40 minutes away in this town there was a game store and they might have stock. So we didn't know how to get there, but we knew
Right, right,
where the
right.
town was, and we got in a car and we drove in that direction until we saw signs for the town, and we wandered around that place for 2 hours. We found it and we bought their last packs. And like
Oh
an
wow.
adventure like that is something that you
Yeah. Well,
can't.
I mean,
It's an experience that no one will ever have again. I don't think.
I don't
Right.
think so because like even playing outside, you guys, my kids didn't do that much. Like I remember just riding around on my bike for hours and hours and hours playing baseball till the sun goes down, and it just doesn't happen the same way anymore.
Yeah,
But I'm
we
happy
went
when
in the
it does.
woods a lot.
In the woods a whole lot, right?
Yeah,
But I
exactly.
think the early days of Magic were kind of like that too. It's like playing around in the woods, discovering what you could find.
Mhm.
You know, I have story. My favorite story is my favorite story about Magic. It is a hilarious story because I'm the sucker in this one. I traded somebody because we had just opened packs. We literally just opened packs, and these were like our first beta packs. So I started in beta, and eventually got like alpha. But that's just because I bought them, not because they were. I didn't open the packs. That would have been something. But I opened a lot of beta packs, let me tell you. And the first couple packs that we opened, we're like looking at all these things and like, oh my God, look at this, crawl worm or whatever. Like, this
Yep.
is amazing. It is a 6/4, 2 green, 3 colorless creature. And somebody said, I have 2 of them. What do you want? And I said, yeah, sure. And I handed over I believe it was a Mox Pearl.
Oh boy.
I'm like, what am I going to do with something that costs 0? You can have this. And they're like, okay.
That's
So
funny.
yeah, I did some bad deals, but I also did some I was lucky. I paid for 6 years of university with Magic.
Wow.
So I did pretty well, but
Yeah. Yeah, I actually probably have about 75,000 cards downstairs. I've got to figure out how to unload because I'm just like I'm not gonna play with my 85 copies of
whatever.
a Benelish hero or something. We had
Although it would be
so much
hilarious if you did.
Yeah, we had so much land that we could like wallpaper rooms with the same planes image.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had a similar experience with Crawworm. I traded it with my girlfriend for her Royal Assassin,
Nice.
not knowing that the Royal Assassin was rare and the Crawworm was like a
Not
common.
rare.
And
Well, exactly. We didn't
when
have
she found
Craigslist.
out, she was like, I was like, okay, here's your Royal Assassin back. I'm sorry, it was green. You love green. I was making a black deck, but
There you go.
okay,
Right.
I was wrong. Here you go. I returned it. So
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it is a fascinating thing. What I really like about your story is how you went from a player collector to a judge, and then you like figuring out the ins and outs and what you like and what you don't like, and then you're like, I have ideas of my own. And you probably always had ideas, but now it's like now's the time to strike and make your own thing. So again, why the TCG model? So I'm not, and I don't mean the exploration and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot to say against using a TCG model, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
what are some of the things that you've heard over the course of time from like friends saying, "What are you doing, Bill? Like, why
Well, a lot
shouldn't
of
you do a
that.
TCG?"
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, a lot of that. I mean, like I said, everyone's like, "Oh, do you got to do an ECG or an LCG?" I had the one of the guys from Foam Brain come by, and he was like, "Oh yeah, no, TCGs are like the hardest market in this really hard market." I'm like, yeah, well, tell me something I don't know.
yeah,
So, but again, I think the thing that I liked about it. So for me, trading card games offered an opportunity to connect with people um, in a way that having everything all at once doesn't.
yeah,
So I mean, like if I go and I buy the Illuminati, full set, right? I've got every card in
yeah.
that set.
Whatever, 300 cards are in there. I
I
don't know how
don't
many there
have to
are.
talk to anybody else or anything, and I can just simply make the best deck that I want to make out of that. And there's no social interaction there. Now
Yeah,
that said, when I first started doing this, it was long before COVID and long before we began socially distancing without a pandemic.
hmm hmm
I think it's harder today to connect and socialize in person than it was 10 years ago. But part of that is COVID, and part of that is just, I think, our insular society now. We're glued to our phones and devices, and we're not interacting in person as much anymore. It's why local game stores are suffering. It's why the mom and pop shops are having problems, all those kinds of things. And so I think having a TCG, the intent really was, again, that socialization, that connection to another person in person. Um, and I mean, I've been playing computer games for forever. And so I'm used to either doing things solo or doing things like, online occasionally. But it's a very different experience than sitting across the table from somebody and playing
hmm
a game and talking and going, "Oh, wow, you have that card. That's really cool. Why did you choose that? Like, why that Mishra's Factory
Yeah,
instead of this?
exactly.
Why winter instead of autumn? I mean, autumn's the best, So that kind of thing. And so
They all
those
work the same.
conversations don't really happen
No.
when you don't have that kind of necessity for interacting with the game in that way.
Right.
So
And the
I
community, right?
exactly, and so that was kind of what we wanted to do, was really to kind of re not re-energize it, because it's I don't think we can't do that, but it was within our community, was to
Yeah.
have that kind of connection available. That, of course, has been a tremendous challenge because I'm an idiot and didn't think things through. But beyond that, it's hard when there's just not a lot of people who are playing a particular game in a particular area.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll say, if you want to play Sorry, you've got to find other people who want to play Sorry. You want to play
Nobody wants to play
Monopoly? Good
Story.
luck, because no one wants to play Monopoly
Exactly.
anymore. Or Axis and Allies or Risk. Everyone's like, I just don't know that I've got 12 hours in me today.
Right.
So, but that's where we were. That's what we were looking at. We were looking at
Okay.
cons primarily as the mechanism for helping do that, and creating that those connections and those
It is the one thing people will
personal
go out to,
relationships.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Just taking a moment to say hi to Sasha out there on the Pacific Northwest area and Matt Paquette in the Ottawa area in Canada. Hey, Matt. Hey, Sasha. Good to have you on. You know what? I love what you just said, Bill. This reminds me of this discussion that I have a lot about television and Netflix, and
Hmm.
particularly the show Lost. Um, if you remember Lost, it's this kind of like huge puzzle. And
Oh
because
yeah.
it was delivered in dribs and drabs, like weekly, you would talk about it at work with your friends, right? You would get together, you'd be eating lunch. Hey, did you watch last night's episode? And you talk. And you have all these theories and all this stuff. And in today's day and age, that really doesn't happen as much because you get the whole show, all 8 episodes or 12 episodes dumped on you at once. And for 5 minutes, everybody's talking about it. They all watch it. They say, "Oh yeah, we liked it," and then that's it. There's no more conversation. And it
Right.
reminds me of what you're talking about with ECGs and LCGs, where for the most part, unless you love the game, that's all it is to you. It's that box with those cards. If you
Mhm.
really love it, maybe you're hoping for expansions or more cards, that kind of thing. But the amount of community and the amount of question and the amount of inquiry and the meta of the whole thing
Yep.
doesn't really exist in the same way that it does for a full TCG where everybody is waiting for the next release. What's the next cycle of cards going to be? What's on the ban list, now that this new cards have come out? Because that
Right.
always changes because you can never predict how cards are going to interact. As much as you'd like to think you can, you just can't.
Right.
Somebody's going to find a way to exploit that based on the wording and the rules and the way they work and the phases and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I get exactly what you're saying, because the analogy with today's technology, that when we can deliver so much at once, all at the same time, it's kind of like a lost art. I was talking
Mhm.
about this with a friend about television being a lost art, in that we don't have enough time in the cycle to actually have character development. It used to be, oh, that character is testing really well in demographics of, middle-aged woman in the Midwest. We need to show that character more. And so the
Right.
next week they would write another part for that person, right?
Yeah.
Because they didn't shoot them 12 episodes at once and deliver them all. It's like every week they'd be, catching up for the next couple of weeks, right?
Mhm.
Anyway, so I think that whole concept of community, that whole concept of the meta, and that TCGs are bigger than the game itself, but the
Mhm.
game still has to be good. Although
Yes.
it doesn't. Here's the thing, though:
It's true.
it has to be good to a point. It has to be good enough to capture the interest of a large enough audience, like a critical mass of an audience that wants to play it again and again. Because
Right.
there are definitely there are better TCGs than Magic, literally,
Sure.
mechanically, anyways.
Yeah.
But in terms of capturing the marketplace, and this is why everybody will say to you, "Oh, TCGs in this economy, don't even try,"
Yeah.
because beating back Pokemon and Magic, unless you have the budget of Hasbro and Pokemon, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do about
Right.
that? It's hard.
It's really hard. You're right. And I mean, there's other games like Lorcana is not doing that great. The Star Wars Unlimited
Mhm.
is kind of flailing a bit. It's like it's Star Wars. I mean, it's like this incredible property. You shouldn't have any problems with it, but they definitely are.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of it happening. I don't see tournaments. I don't see learn to play sessions. It's just like nothing's really going on. Of
Well,
course,
again,
again, I
you have to beat Magic.
yeah, exactly. And I think a part of it is that Magic's the 800-pound gorilla. Pokemon is the 798-pound gorilla. Yu-Gi-Oh's up there too,
Yeah.
and it's just all those games because they had such either they were the first one like Magic. I mean, Magic wasn't really the first one. You had actual baseball cards as the
Yeah.
first trading card games, but you have Magic sort of is that dominant player, and then you have two really good IPs, both in Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon, that drove the card game independently. So unless you have a really good IP, or you are Magic, or you have someone with Hasbro's pockets, you're right. It's a very challenging market, and
Yeah.
we see it a lot. I mean, Flesh and Blood is doing okay, but not
Mhm.
great. Primal is they're keeping their head above water. Grand Archive above head above water. But when I look at all the games that people are working on and all the things that people have in mind for like what their game is going to look like, you know, the question I'm always asking to these designers is, well, what's your intent? Everyone's like, well, how do I get started? It's like, well, what do you want to do? Do you
Yeah.
want to see your product in a store, or do you want to play it with friends?
Yeah.
Because those are two very different paths with very different levels of pain associated with both of them.
And the other thing is, like, not even just in a store, but how long of a shelf life do you want for that game, or are you willing to support it for the years and years and years that, like, so people out there might not actually know how Magic works and how they have development teams and how it's not just one guy. It's not Richard
Right.
Garfield at all anymore doing almost anything about Magic. It's Rosewater and teams of multiple people doing multiple things
Yep.
in series and in parallel. So it's an industry. Like, to run that
Yes.
is an industry. My friend works for Pokemon. He used to be a pro Magic player, and he jumped ship. No, he actually worked for another company first. But then he went to Pokemon. He is actually the person who does all of the tournament support.
Oh,
So
okay. Yeah.
he makes up how tournament works and how they support the tournaments and all these things. And that's what you need to actually have as big a presence as Magic or Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh is have the infrastructure, the people, the tournament support, the prize money. All these things matter in order to keep the game alive. And if a company can't or won't support something, and it's very easy to not get support, guys. It's just your game performs poorly in the market, whether or not it's a good game. It just doesn't sell, and then it's off the shelf. It's off their list. They pull funding from that area, and your game can just be dead in the water.
Absolutely.
Right? And we're talking about that right now in the industry with some games that we don't know. Like, the hype is big, but is it going to survive? I don't know. Right?
Yeah.
So,
well, you have things like
funny.
Peterson Games, right? That had they did Cthulhu Death May Die.
Oh, Sandy, yeah.
And then they had like 3 Kickstarters that like tremendously funded, and then didn't deliver a single thing. And so those properties got purchased by another person now, and they're trying to figure out, how do we fulfill on these Kickstarter promises? And they're just like, there's no way we're going to lose money on every single one of just the Kickstarters. You know, from trying to manufacture something that was what was intended versus what's possible. And it was a really, the guy wrote an article about it. It was a really interesting read about all the things that they were struggling with. But I mean, that was a pretty well known. I mean, I have Death May Die, and I've got, a couple of the
they did Cthulhu Wars.
Oh, Cthulhu Wars. Sorry, yes.
Yeah, Death May Die is Restoration.
Yeah, and I have Cthulhu Wars also.
That's Simon. Sorry, Simon.
Yeah, Simon. Right. But I have Cthulhu Wars, and my son loves it. It's a lot of fun. But I guess we got lucky that we happened to pick up a copy. That was one of the ones that they actually fulfilled on. And I know Sandy Peterson from Call of Cthulhu and all the other stuff. So, it's not like his name didn't have any cachet in the industry. It certainly did. But it's just, how you're running a business and being a creative are sometimes not as compatible.
That's right.
And so, people are like, look, I want to make my game. And it's like, okay, great. Well, then, find a publisher or make it for yourself, print it on cardstock, cut it out, stick it in sleeves, and call it good. But don't try to, find a printer and, talk to wholesalers and retailers. And if you want to have a distributor, there's these things. Our first experience at Gamma Expo was incredibly informative and incredibly
demoralizing.
Yes, demoralizing. That's the word I was looking for. It was terrible.
I knew it was.
My daughter and I went, and we're just like, okay, so here's our plan. And then it was like the first panel was like, we're not going to do your thing. And we're like, okay, what's plan B? We go this way. And plan B, the next hour was, you need to do this. And we're like, oh, okay, well, that's not going to work either. All right, what's plan Q? Because that's about what we're up to now.
Right? It's like,
and that suddenly where self-publishing had to come in, because that was our only choice available based on what we could do. And so, what I wanted to have happen in either plan A or plan B was just simply not feasible for us. And so we had to go with a completely different route, and that ended up being what we did. So,
yeah. And in the end, it's funny because it seems like things are going okay. The game has critical appraisal in terms of like Origins Awards nominations and things like that. So James is saying he hopes he wasn't one of the ones that demoralized you. James Takanaka, ex of James, where are you now? Actually, I can't remember where you are. It's because people shift so much. He used to be with Hit Point Consolidation.
Oh,
and now
it was the first session we went to was a panel with retailers, and in essence, the retailers were like, "Look, if we don't know who you are, we're not going to buy a product we have to throw away in 6 months." And we're like,
"It's true, right?"
And I'm like, I appreciate the honesty, It was a little brutal delivery, but
Mhm.
I appreciate the honesty. And then the next one was the distributors, and
Oh,
they're
that
like,
would
we
be
want this
James.
much off MSRP, and we want these things, and we're just like,
Yeah,
that's a
that would have been
loss
James.
on every product.
I
So yeah,
mean, yes, unless you can make it for that, unless you can figure out how to do it for less, right?
exactly.
Um, there you go. Yeah, James is at Quartermaster now, and he used to sell
You
Naruto
were that
TCG.
seminar too, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was. I think they had the same seminar every year, but it
Mm.
was, yeah, it was demoralizing. And I mean, again, we were noobs, right?
Mhm.
We built the game, we understood the mechanics, we understood even more about the meta than we did about Magic, and we understood like what we wanted to do from a competitive stand, like being able to have competitions and tournaments and stuff. So we had all that stuff kind of lined up in our brains, but the business part of it was the not creative part of it. And
Also
I own
known
a
as the
couple of
no fun
businesses.
part. No
Well, it is.
fun.
It's absolutely known as the no fun part. And I have a couple of businesses that I run, but they're completely different industries.
Mhm.
And one of them is a hobby, and one of them is my bread and butter 9 to 5. And
Right.
so, I totally can manage those things. But this was like a whole different universe of, what do you mean I have to get a SKU? What do you mean I need a SKU
Mm.
code? I have to talk to who again to register for a 3-letter thing? My SKU has to be formatted like what?
Mm.
Where
Yeah.
do I have to get UPC codes from? What are you talking?
From one
It's
very
just
specific place, because otherwise you may get a reused one.
Yes. Mm.
exactly.
These are
And
all
so
very
that was the
important
thing.
things. Very important, Paul.
You
Very
don't
important.
know. You don't
Mm.
know.
Until
And
you
so
know, and now you know.
Mm.
until you know, and now you know. But the learning curve is really steep, and
Mm.
it's very it's tribal knowledge that's not commonly available, and so you
Yeah.
have to be part of the group to get the tribal knowledge. But then when you get it, you're like, oh, now I okay. But
Yeah.
if you
We
don't
you
know, you
wish
don't
it's like
know.
you knew it before you started making the game,
Exactly.
or before you even
Right.
had these little dreams, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's what organizations like Gamma, like the TTGA are all about, is like, how do we get that knowledge to people before they even need it? Right? Or at
Yes.
least it's in a repository where they can easily access it. It's not hidden behind arcane, locks and keys that you need some kind of cantrip to open or
Yeah.
whatever.
Right.
So yeah, I feel you on that one. Uh, George, do you have any questions for Bill about TCGs specifically? Because this was your ask. So
Yeah.
what do we want to talk about?
I mean, so you've made the decision to make this game. Like, how did you go from I have this design to like I have this thing in physical paper, ready to send to people? Like, I just want to work through like the logistics of like how you made this, because as you said, like when people I meet people and they're like, I totally want to do this, I generally tell them maybe you shouldn't.
Right.
But they're usually, one or two teenagers who are like, I have this great idea for this thing that no one's ever seen before because they haven't played 30 years of games, and they're
Yeah.
just wide-eyed and excited. But yeah, there's a obviously there's you have a lot of assets to generate and a lot of testing to do, and yeah, just tell us a bit about that story, how you got from design to product.
Yeah. So, I mean, I worked on the idea for probably about 10 years. Just again, I'd have a hyper burst of focus, and like for 2 weeks, it was like all round table, and I was, making cards and playing and putting things in, like, doing test decks and test draws and everything, and playing around with it. And then it would like go asleep for 2 years, and then it would come back for a month, and then it would be asleep for another year. Um, and so it was, like I said, it was about 3 or 4 years ago that I said, I'm kind of tired of having this thing in the back of my brain. I think this would be a fun game. I think the setting is compelling. A lot of people like the Arthurian legends. I mean, there's TV shows about it. There's, it's like movies. I think people like it. So I think people might enjoy the, moving in that direction. So I started the process, and I began talking with other people in my life, and I was saying, hey, look, here's what I'm thinking. And what about this idea? What about this idea? And so mostly I bounced it off my wife, who was that very early Magic player with me, and a couple of my friends that I was still in touch with from those years, and asking them questions. And it's like, well, should we have rarities? Should we, you know, go the ECG LCG route or a TCG route? Um, and then when we finally started the process, I created just some basic assets. I made some pre-constructed decks using cards that I had designed, and then I went into GIMP because I couldn't afford to pay for Photoshop for Adobe Illustrator, and so I said, never mind, we're just going to use GIMP. And so I made just some basic card ideas, basic frames, stuck some images in there, and then started. And then I sent those off. I think I sent those off to MakePlayingCards.com in China, and then they sent me back like a few decks that I had asked for. And then actually, I ran my first real playtest session with my son's Dungeons and Dragons group. So I was their DM. They had watched Stranger Things, and they were like, "Ooh, D&D, that sounds interesting." And I'm like, "Okay." I said, "Well, what do you guys want to play? Do you want to play OG Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, which is really the only thing I know, or you're going to make me learn 5th edition because I don't know it?" And they're like, "Oh, we want to go OG, man. We want what they're playing in Stranger Things." And I'm like, "Okay, but that I can do because I was those kids." So when we at the end of some of these sessions, we would break out the roundtable cards and play, and they would, they would help me figure out like, hey, the resource structure is a little wonky, or how do I, this seems overpowered for this. And so it was really interesting because there's a bunch of 12-year-olds, 11 and 12-year-olds kind of going, hey, wait a second, how does this work again? But it was really interesting because teaching them how to play really reinforced it for us.
Right.
And then, like I said, as it progressed, I began to get other people. I'm like, hey, look, I need to put ads in newspapers to start getting artists to submit art. And so one of the places I went to colleges, and so I submitted.
What are newspapers?
Well, they don't exist anymore.
That's what I'm saying.
But there were online.
Tale as old as time.
Yeah, but the things that I had known, like when I was in college, like the college paper,
right?
Those are online now. But I went to the places where you can still advertise in that space, and I went to those guys for CSU, Colorado State, University of Colorado in Boulder, and University of Wyoming, which is my alma mater, and contacted them and said, hey, look, I want to place an ad for this contest that I'm running for, for art. We're giving away $100 to the top placement, and we're giving away shares of profit sharing stock for people who submit art and stuff. And then the guy who was in charge of the publishing at UW was like, hey, wait, that sounds really interesting. I'm going to learn more about that. And so we sat down and talked, and he's like, I'm a graphic designer. Do you need that? And I'm like, yes, please. So he did all of our graphic design for about a year and a half.
That's awesome.
And again, just sort of coalesced into it. And then another woman I met became one of my primary contacts for like getting in touch with game stores to run learn to plays and that kind of thing. And so progressively, the game got more refined, visually, playtesting wise. The big thing for us was we went to the first exposure playtest hall at Gen Con with our game. We were at the 0.6 level. And we thought we had a pretty good game, and they gave us some really constructive feedback.
Good.
Wasn't brutal, thankfully, but there were things like, you have a picture of a person that looks like a knight, but it's a title. So can we maybe make that not? And so we're like, you're right. We should not have any people, any portraits as our images for our titles. Let's keep just the images to just the knights. The portraits. That makes sense. Got it. Yeah. That's great feedback. Thank you. And then some other things about like the coloring and those kinds of things. So we ended up making quite a few adjustments to that. But that's when we launched our Kickstarter, was during Gen Con. And
what year was that?
That was 2023.
Okay.
August of 2023. And I kind of felt like we had a really good summer. We did a whole bunch of, learn to play sessions and demos at different game stores on the Front Range here in Colorado. And I kind of felt like, we've got a good game. We feel like we're really kind of moving the right direction. And I think it's time for us to do that. That said, we were woefully underprepared for running a Kickstarter. We did not have the mailing list for people. We did not have the level of interest that we needed. In fact, the only thing that really saved us was someone who got a highest tier reward, which put us a lot closer to our goal than we would have been without it. But also the publicity at Gen Con.
Hey,
Being able to
good.
talk to people and say, hey, look, we've launched our Kickstarter. It's live now. And so we had quite a few people join the Kickstarter as a result of our exposure at Gen Con. And then, but I mean, I paid for advertising. I was doing all the things that I thought I was supposed to do. Board Game Geek, I ran ads, and I did Facebook ads and Instagram ads and that kind of stuff. And we just weren't getting a lot of traction there. And, part of that is people don't want a new TCG. They're either into Magic, Pokemon, or Yu-Gi-Oh, or they're not interested in TCGs. Those are kind of your choices.
Yeah, because there are definitely people who aren't interested in TCGs because they were once interested in TCGs,
There's
now
that.
they lost a lot of time and money to TCGs. So.
Yes, very, very true, very true. So, like I said, so that was kind of it. But when we looked at, we used the same printer that we used for all of our demo decks, and that was because every publisher I talked to in the U.S. was like, "Oh, well, you need to order 500,000 to 1 million cards for us to even talk to you." And I'm like, dude, I'm not dropping $250,000 on cards. I can't afford that. And so it was like the only option available to us was to go overseas, and we still spent like $14,000 to get all of our cards printed. But and we have a lot of cards. We got like 160,000. But in the trading card game realm, 160,000 cards is incredibly small run.
Drop in the ocean.
It is. So, but like I said, everyone I talked to, I talked to one company and they're like, "Oh, we only print Magic cards." We're like, well, then never mind.
Well, then why are you even here?
Exactly. So, but that was
my
what
business
drove it.
then.
And then the Kickstarter was really got us over the hump and into the possibility of actually having a released game.
Right. And so, is the game in distribution, or are you getting it into stores in other ways?
It is not in distribution. It is through one distributor, and I'm working on trying to get it up onto Fair. So right now it's available via ICV2. They actually have a direct model, which is really good for small publishers, because rather than sending them your product, they act as a aggregator for the orders from the LGS, and then they forward those orders to each of the independent in the indie publishers, and then the publishers send directly to the store. So the store isn't going to get one box with 15 different games. They're going to get 15 different packages, each with one game from 15 different places. But it makes it economical for the indie publishers to do it, because now we can, and without having to pay any warehousing and restock.
So you're storing all those copies at your home or somewhere?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Somewhere near your house, right?
Everything that we do is very manual. One of the things, so here's one of the other challenges, is the way that we've constructed our decks is very intentional. You get 20 lands, you get 3 regions, you get 45 cards. Those 45 cards are a blend of all the different kinds of cards we have. We have 5 different cards types, and then you also have 4 different rarities. And my wife hand assembles every single deck and every single booster pack, because
I was actually just about to ask that about, like, so how does the randomization process happen and the booster packs and whatnot?
Well, it happens with the card shuffler we bought off of Amazon for like $8. But what we want to do is we want to make sure that every deck is playable from the box. And so, unlike some games where you get a whole bunch of green spells and red mana, and you're like, great, now I got to go to my box and get green mana to be able to play these. We want every deck to be playable from the box. And so there's a very intentional construction to all of this work that we're doing, which you can't really automate easily. And so every manufacturer we talked to, they were like, we can do it, but it's
you don't want to pay us to do it. Yeah, exactly.
They're all
it's
like,
hard.
It's
cost. You're going to stop some line to do it. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, it's practically a manual process for them to do it that way. And
yes, which
I've
is what
talked to a couple of places. Yeah, it is. And I talked to some folks about trying to find automation ways of doing it with like card sorting, systems and stuff like that. But that's like $500,000. And those are
Yeah.
intended for like TCG player to take in a collection and sort it appropriately by by rarity, by value, by magic set, by quality. It's like, okay, great, but I can't afford $500,000 to get something that we're going to have to do ourselves by hand. And we've gotten pretty good at it. We're pretty fast at it, but it's still a manual process for right now. And we need to figure out what we want to do in the future, because it would be nice to not have that be a manual process.
Yeah.
But by the same token, the automation is hard. So it's hard to figure that out right now.
Yeah, we often talk about how sometimes when you have a dream and that dream is a specific certain way, it's actually very hard to manufacture at scale, because scaling requires automation. Automation costs. And every time you stop a production line, your costs just increase, especially if you add human touch to that, right? Where only a human can decide that. And if you program something to do it, then that's all it's doing. So it's a very expensive thing to get like a logic system to do your sorting for you. So James is asking a question over here. He has a ton of questions. You're answering some of them already. And then you just answered this one, but are you manually making booster packs in a box, in booster packs? How do you sell? What's the product look like in the end?
So we have
buy something like have a heat sealer or something.
Yeah, and I have one of these to shrink wrap to seal up all the shrink wrap. And we do everything ourselves right now. So
wow.
Again, I mean, it's like I said, it's when
you're like an Etsy store.
We are. That actually might not be as far off as I want it to be. So the characterization might be more truthful. It is in essence. I mean, we do hand assemble the starter decks. So your starter deck that we have is just a standard thing. I'm trying to see if I've got one nearby, but I don't.
You have a starter
decks.
I do.
George has one.
No, there you go. Yeah, George has got one. There you go. But the starter deck, like I said, it's specially crafted to be playable from the box, and the whole point of it is it's got 45 cards, and then 45 main cards, and then lands and regions, which is what you need to play the game, and then a couple of rules cards so that you can play.
Yeah.
And then we do our booster packs also. We have 18 card booster packs, which is 15 cards, and then 3 regions. Oh no, you have 5 regions in the starter deck. Sorry, I apologize. I've been quoting the wrong number there. We have 5 regions, because that's everything that you need to play. A game is for 5 regions. So you have everything that you need to play in one deck. Each player should ideally have a deck for themselves, but that's it. I mean, that's the nice thing, is that you don't have to have any boosters. You don't have to augment at all. You buy a starter deck and you're good to go. The challenge is with the boosters and stuff is when we have, those are more randomized, and they are more based on just simply rarity as opposed to ensuring the right blend of everything. It's like you get 1 legendary, you get excuse me, 2 rares, that kind of stuff. And those are just like how that booster is constructed. But the starters take a lot more time because they are so intentional. And we wanted to make it that way. And that makes it really hard, because we're not just simply, throw in a rare and some uncommons and some commons and call it good.
So they're intentional but random at the same time, or random-ish.
Yes. Exactly.
So they're random-esque, random light.
Correct.
Okay.
But there's going to be the right blend. So we have a number of common, uncommon, rare, and legendary knights. And so you might get a couple of the same common knights as somebody else will. And you might, but your rares and legendaries may not even be knights. They might be a title, or they might be equipment, like Excalibur or the Green Knight's Axe. Those are our legendary equipment. So,
of course they are.
Those things are in there for, and the players are going to get those when they open that deck, or that starter deck, or starter pack.
Very cool. James says that he really recommends Fair over ICV2 because they are getting way more growth on Fair with hobby game stores. just about nothing on ICV2.
Yeah.
So he's hoping, fingers crossed, that you get better results with Fair. So keep the talks up, and we'll see if you can get games into more things that way. Thanks,
Yeah,
James.
I just got approved. Thank you, James, for that, because I did just get approved for setting that up. I'm actually in the process of uploading our store to them, along with all the images and stuff, so that we can associate that and have it. But
all them SKUs.
Exactly. And let me tell you that, I mean, I did them all, and I actually printed them on the box and printed the UPC codes on the box that were the wrong UPC codes. And so it's so yeah, no, all of our boxes, if they're going to a retailer, I need to like put a sticker on the bottom of the box with the correct information, because all the boxes are wrong. It's terrible.
That has happened to more people than you know. So Jay actually got a call from customs saying, hey, you can't put that on the box, like, or whatever, because it probably said something like the country of origin and made in whatever country. So it's made in China, not made in Canada, and I think he had to go and sticker everything.
Oh wow!
Before they would let him take it away from customs.
Wow.
So yeah, some mistakes are made, and you learn from those. But yeah, lots and lots of things. So
and expensive mistakes too. I mean, like
time
I'm not
and money,
reprinting.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to reprint the 500 starter deck boxes I got. I'm going to invest in $20 worth of stickers,
and a couple hours of
shipping
time.
labels to stick at the bottom of those when I need to, which is not that often. Like I said, we aren't in hobby stores yet. We want to be, because our original plan was,
well, not with that attitude, you won't. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, our original plan was make games, sell game to hobby stores sell game to customer happy, hobby game store happy, we happy. Yay, win, win, win.
Yeah.
And then we heard, we're not going to buy a product we don't know anything about from a company we've never heard of that we're going to have to throw away in 6 months. And I was like,
it's very rare that works.
It is, but that's the naivete of not having been in this industry and trying to do that. So
so it's like, at least your Kickstarter, you have numbers, which helps. And then the more SKUs you have, the more likely a distributor is to at least even consider you, because you have to understand, everybody, that a distributor has a pallet or pallets per company. And if you don't fill a pallet and you're part of another pallet, that's really weird for them. They like having like the fewest number of contacts they can possibly have for the most number of products that they can have, right? So it's all efficiency. They're working on efficiency. You think they're working on efficiency, and then you see efficiency, you go, what are you doing? But anyway, it's really hard for small people to become bigger, and it's really actually almost easy for big people to become bigger, which is this whole kind of weird unfairness about economies of scale. But anyway,
if I could, I'm just
aside.
If I could, you're right. And I think the thing is that with the explosion of the indie publisher, the indie developer in the last 5 years, it's an old business model that is persisting at the expense of all of these new ideas that people have. I mean, some people are even doing just the, hey, I'm going to do Kickstarter and we're going to make this game and I'm going to make those copies for my Kickstarter backers, and then I'm out of that product. I'm not going to make any more. I'm going to go on to the next game and then do the same thing and just pocket the profits.
As opposed to growing a business in a different way.
And so it's just like a project by project kind of thing. Yes.
And you know what? I'm here for that. And if that's what you want to do, that's totally fine, right? I was talking to Daniel Newman, who ran the Indie Games Night Market at PAX last year, and we just did an interview with him for Ludology, so it's up online now. And it was just really interesting to talk to him about, what is happening, why is it happening? And I think things like that are a great way for the indie designers to do things. Like, it's more like a flea market, but that might be the vibe you need. Like I said, saying like it's like an Etsy store it's not a diss. It's just maybe that's not what you intended it to be at first. But you can't be WotC with one product, right? And you can't be even Asmodee's huge. So another smaller publisher. I don't know.
Well, Flesh and Blood or Grand Archive. I mean, those guys are relatively successful, and they're not, you know, they're not huge. They're
No,
not a WotC. They're not a
no, but
Asmodee.
they have enough product and differentiation in product that they can fit within that so-called archaic distribution model, which
Yes.
it is. There is something that is there's something unagile about it, right? That
Yes.
it is something that doesn't work very well. And James can talk about consolidation and how that works. But consolidation is like a subsystem of distribution. They still use the same distribution model, but they're doing heavy lifting for a bunch of smaller companies and then taking a percentage, right? So, it's like how to cut out the middleman without, but the middleman has some benefits to it. So,
Yes.
yeah, we'll see.
Exactly.
We'll see.
Yeah, for
Or
a lot
just
of,
go fully
people I talk
direct.
to.
Yeah.
People I talk to are like, hey, look, if you can get into Southern Hobby or Alliance or whatever, then we'll totally sock it. And I'm like, yeah, that ain't gonna happen. And that's
Yeah.
a hard sell. And it's, it's like, look, I'm willing to have a relationship with you directly. Let's talk and figure out if there's a good opportunity here for us. For me to just talk with you and we just, get you product into your store. But that's a hard thing because that's not also how LGSs are normally set up. And I think a lot of people, when they go into that industry, they don't know. Like our home store closed because they were just people would show up at the store, play the game in their store, and then go on Amazon and buy it.
Yeah.
Because they could get it for 3 cents cheaper from Amazon and it was delivered.
Yeah.
And it was like, I mean, that's one of the challenges with the LGS market today is just, online is so much faster and cheaper in a lot of ways. It's not immediate, but, you're not paying tax or you're not, having to pay shipping or whatever. And so a lot of people just look at that as it's just the convenience element.
Yeah.
So,
you're willing to pay for convenience, right?
Yep.
It makes somebody else a billionaire. So yeah,
Exactly.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff to be said all about everything you just said in the hobby game space in general. But for a TCG, the other thing that I think, so having distribution, it's this weird thing, right? Because it is almost like a proxy marker of success.
Yes, it is.
Right. And if you got distribution, oh, that must mean X, Y, and Z. It's like, it really doesn't. But we conflate that in our head. Like stores will conflate it. Designers, publishers will conflate it. Like it's like the funded in 1 minute,
Yes.
That's just a marker. Who knows what that means? Nobody, but we like it. Our brain likes it. Our brain likes to hear it. And the same thing with I'm in distribution now. It's like, well, what does that really mean? Well, it just means that a certain amount of stores can actually buy from there instead of from me directly.
Yes.
And they never would have bought from me directly because they like having accounts and POs and one process and talking to 3 distributors instead of 30 individual creators, right?
Exactly. Yep.
So I get it. But then everybody wants a cut and you wonder why you can't have, a lot of people want to do this full time and they're not because you can't survive.
No.
Right. So there's all sorts of things that I think are good and bad about distribution. But one of the things that I think I want to ask you before we go, because we've gone quite a while, but do you have plans in place for support of the community for Roundtable, like tournaments, giveaways? How is that going to happen, or does it happen already? Do you have plans, and have you put any in action? That is my question.
That is a very good question. So we actually we did sign up with Cardio for our Cardi.io for running tournaments and stuff, but that was a lot cart before horse. The one thing we needed to be really focusing on was building up the player base. Before I thought there was a nice synergy there. I thought if we offered a platform that people could play tournaments with, then they would be encouraged to buy the game and play in the tournaments because there were awards and that rewards and stuff like that. And that didn't happen. We just simply didn't get the traction that I was looking for out of that. And it was disappointing that wasn't the case, but that's okay. It happens. So we do actually have our online rule set, which actually you can get by scanning the QR code on the back of one of the rules cards. Will take you to there's tournament rules at the bottom there about like, hey, look, if you can play with these 5 regions, and that's the Cornwall tournament, and here's an Anglia tournament, and here's a Wales tournament, and then here's the Grand Melee, which is um, all the regions that you can play with. And so we do have the rules for it, and we do have the infrastructure to support it. What we don't have right now are just simply a number of players in the same location to actually run a tournament, and that's the problem. So it's just trying to get, we have tens of players all over the place, but they're just not in one place, and so it's really hard for us to say, mass. Hey, let right. And so, maybe we do this at a Gen Con or an Origins for next year. Do a world tournament. A kind of thing. I do have Excalibur, and I actually have 2 of those. One is mine. One was my father's. When he passed away, I got it. And so we might give away an Excalibur to the winner of the first annual Roundtable World Tour tournament. We do have plans for doing that kind of stuff. There are people who are interested in playing competitively, and we'd like to be able to support that. It's just a challenge of where and when. But we are definitely considering that. In terms of support for the game itself, we plan to continue this. We've got another game that we're just introducing now.
Right.
It's in pre-release. Yep, Sudoku, which is it's Sudoku, but it's duck themed, with little rubber ducks. And you haven't seen this one, George. This is the new version with the blue and the yellow.
I haven't seen it in that color now.
Yeah, you've seen the elegance version with the black and gold. And we're trying to find a publisher for that, because that's one of those things that we looked at and we're like, this is very easily a travel game people could pick up at a Target and take on the road with them. And I can't do that. Our company is me and occasionally my wife and my daughter. And so we don't really have the infrastructure to support anything that's like a mass market kind of thing. And so I'm trying to find somebody who's going to be able to pick that up. But that's another thing that we're trying to do, is to try to turn this into a growing concern, make Nimue Studios an actual business that is doing these things. We have a relationship with our artists where we have licensed their art for the cards, but they retain the rights in exchange for 1 or more shares of profit sharing. And then when we turn a profit, we are going to share that profit with the artists in the same way that Magic did back in the day, so that, to help that, thank you for taking a risk with your artwork for our game. You're taking a chance, and we want to reward that opportunity. And what we did is we reserved all the other rights with the artist. All we can do is reproduce their art on the card. And so we're trying very hard to be equitable for our art contributors, because it was a huge part of what makes the game the game.
Right.
And that's a hard thing. And if all we're relying on are roundtable sales, it's going to be really hard.
Right. Oh, right. Well, George, do you have any last minute questions for Bill?
No, I think we covered just about everything. I just thought it was novel as a note that I know that Richard Garfield designed Magic as a game to play between rounds, between sessions of D&D.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how you tested this game.
Yeah.
You put it together. It's just everything comes around.
Yeah, you're right. That is funny.
That is very funny. All right, everybody. If you would like to talk to me at further length about anything game related, you can find me on the old blue sky at Senfeng Lim. Where are you, George?
Dreyer Ink still on all the things.
Still on all the things. Maple Syrup is on all the things. And there you are, Bill. If people want to talk to Bill, they can reach you at
Nimue Studios. Nimue being the name of the chief lady of the lake in the Arthurian legends.
Oh, I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, there's actually a Netflix show. I think it's called like Betrayed or something. I forget. It's got the woman who was in 13 Reasons Why, the Hannah Baker character. Yeah. She is playing Nimue in that show, so she becomes the Lady of the Lake as part of that. So it's an interesting little show. But yeah, Nimue Studios, we're pretty much that, or Nimue Innovation Studios. I think there's a couple of places where I had to put the innovation in there because someone beat us to the shorter one.
All right, and you can find out more about their products, especially Roundtable, at nimuestudios.com.
Thank you.
Next week, what are we doing next week, George? Do you have a plan? Do you have an idea?
No, I will figure something out.
All right, we'll figure something out. So stay tuned, everybody.
Yeah.
If you want to help keep the lights on, check out patreon.com/maple-syrup. And okay, Bill, I told you, I warned you. This is it. Your moment in the sun.
Okay.
What is your piece of final advice?
Yeah, I think so. I'm gonna stick to the indie publisher gaming kind of space, and that is really figure out what you want to do with your project. Decide if you want to go the Kickstarter as my business model route, if you want to make it for friends and you guys just have fun with it, or if you really want to try to go down the route of, like actually trying to put it into a store and be able to walk into a local game store or even a Target or Barnes and Noble or something and go, that's mine. Your end goal is going to very drastically change what you're going to be doing with your idea. So having that in mind and understanding like what that entails, and then again, like how much pain you're signing up for with each of those different paths. None of them are, some of them are easier than others. None of them are easy, but some of them are very, 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 very hard. And just be conscientious of that when you're going down that path.
Yeah, lots of sliding scales, right?
Yes.
Control versus creativity, and more money versus less money, and all those things. So really kind of figure out who you want to be and what you want to do with the product. It's a great piece of advice for anybody starting out and thinking that they'd like to do that. It's a good question. Well, what do you want to do with this?
Yes.
Perfect.
Exactly.
Perfect. All right, everybody. We will see you next week, same time, same place. Thank you so much, Bill, for showing up and telling us all about Roundtable. Anybody out there in the market for a new TCG, go check it out.
Please.
George, we'll see you next week.
Me.
Yep.
Yeah, anytime. See ya.
Yeah.
Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.